Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today. It's been a while since I've been worshipping with you, and it was lovely to see the Sabbath school classes. I don't think, as I've visited around our conference, so many people in small groups. That's why you're a big church. That's fantastic. I know while Neil was a little bit in two minds this morning, because I scared him on Thursday morning when I phoned him up and said, I'm not sure if I can preach this Sabbath. I've been struggling with a bit of pneumonia and my voice hasn't been going very well. Those of you who know me would probably be able to pick that up. I don't normally speak like this. But then I did phone him on Friday afternoon and said, look, it should be all right. But I think he's still a bit worried that my voice might give out halfway through, so he's got a sermon going on in his head, that's all. I'm not stewardship director, by the way. Yeah, but that's okay. I was asked to be stewardship director and trust services director, but I did see there was a little bit of conflict of interest between if I was to do both of those, so I just took the role of trust services. I couldn't help but think, you know, that saying about working with children and animals, with the children's story. It was lovely, by the way. But, I just love that table. That was brilliant. Put your arms out, and no, we weren't. And there's also a young fella, I don't know his name, but he's obviously a leader, and I think, you know, if you keep an eye on him, you might want to help him along that line, because he was the first one out here even before the songs played. And then someone else followed him out there, and he was the first one in the cubby house. So, you know, he's one to watch in the future. I'd like to take you on a bit of a journey with me, if you will. And so I'm going to, it's a fairly reflective kind of presentation this morning. And I guess it's one of those ones that you'll get as much out of it as you're prepared to put into it, kind of one. And all journeys start in the beginning, and so I thought that's a good place to start. So let's start with in the beginning, shall we? And do I have to press? Yep, there we go. Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. Now, many of you are probably very familiar with this passage. If for no other reason that you've given yourself the idea in the 1st of January that you're going to read through the whole scriptures in a year. And you started here. And then you got to Numbers. And you struggled a little bit. And so next year you thought, I'm going to do it this year. And so you've started here again. So you're probably very familiar with this verse. I want you to take, as we read it together, I want you to think carefully about the words that it says, because I'm going to quiz you on it. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. I particularly like that section here. The Spirit of God was hovering. It seems to me it's very pregnant with meaning. It's like something amazing is about to happen. And so there was. Now, you can help me with this if you like. What happened on the first day? I'll give you a clue. First 3 days, there was separation. By the way, I love going to pastors' meetings, because in pastors' meetings, all the men and the ladies that are there sing when we sing. And it's just beautiful. If you've never been to a pastor's meetings, just go for the singing. Today, I was really blessed by your singing, I've got to say. And the fact that you could follow with little instruction what the men and ladies had to do, I'm thinking you have the potential of being a great choir. And this lady here, I'm thinking, I don't know your name, but I'm thinking it's you, had the sweetest voice. She should be up there, I think, as well. Anyway, first 3 days. Separation, 1, 2, and 3. What was separated on day 1? Light and darkness. Okay, day 1, separation, light and dark. Okay. Day 2, I'm giving a clue there. Waters above, waters below. The waters were separated. Day 3, who can tell me what was separated? Land and water. Very good. But on day 3, you may not have realised this before, but there is actually a part B. There's a second creation event that occurs. Can you tell me what that is? Plants, vegetation. Very good. Right, 1, 2, 3, 3A and 3B. On day 4, what was separated in day 1 is now filled. So what's created on day 4? Sun, moon and stars. Okay, so what was separated on day 1, light and darkness, is now filled with sun, moon and stars. Day 5 fills what was separated on day 2. With the firmament above, firmament below, you've now got the birds and the fish. And on day 6 fills what? The land with animals. But on day 6, just like day 3, there is a second creation event. And that's us. Humans, if you like. Very good. We'll just have a look at it there. It's sort of easy to see. So if you've never noticed it before, there is actually quite a structure to Genesis, chapter 1 to 2:4a. And there's a relationship clearly between day 1, day 4, day 2, day 5, and day 3 and day 6. And I would suggest to you that the author of Moses, inspired by God, not only was inspired to use the words that he chose, if you like, but also the form in which he chose to put it in. Because there's a message within the structure, I would suggest to you. The emphasis in Genesis 1 to 2:4a is not, I would argue, humans. It's not you and I. That's really not what this is about. Now, you might go into the so-called second creation story in chapter 2 and argue something from there, but from Genesis chapter 1, there's something else going on, which is quite important to us as Seventh-day Adventists. Take your mind back to Genesis 1:1. What is the very first concept in Genesis 1:1? Sorry? God. God is the subject, but there's a concept before God. What's that to do with in the beginning? What's that to do with? Time. Very good. Time. And as you go through Genesis, it's all to do with time. In fact, it reminds us at the end of each day that morning and evening. And it was good. Morning and evening. It was good. Day 4, all those systems there have to do with time. And they give us, and this takes you back to primary school, how do we get our year? Where does our year come from? Earth's rotation around the sun, yeah? It takes once to go around the sun. Who can tell me how long it takes for Pluto to go around the sun? I don't know either. It's a long time. Many of our years. Many of our years. Pluto's not a planet anymore anyway, so it doesn't matter. All right, so that gives us our year. How do we get our day? The Earth's rotation, once. All right, that gives us our 24 hours. And our month comes from the moon. Okay, our lunar month, basically. Yeah. Kind of here or there. All right, very good. All to do with time. But if you notice, this is ordinary, everyday working time. Ordinary, everyday working time. And the climax, not only in the words, but in the structure, sits out all on its own. All on its own. It's the Sabbath day. The seventh day. And the climax is holy time. Special time. And the wonderful thing about this is that God could have created anything to be that holy place or thing. He could have made it a mountain. He could have said, this is the holy mountain, and it's here in which I will meet with you and we'll walk together and talk together. But we know what happens when people make holy things. Other people want to own those holy things and charge other people to get access to those holy things, and wars and all sorts of things happen from that. God didn't create a holy thing. He made holy time. And whether we recognize it or not, every person in the world, no matter where you are, experiences the seventh day. Friday evening, depending on, of course, some teacher will argue with me, but what about the North Pole? Okay. Maybe they don't have a daily cycle of day and night. But every Friday evening as the earth rotates, that gift of the Sabbath comes to everyone. And we can choose to revel in it and love it and experience it and make the most of it, or not. But it's for everyone. And no one can control it. No one can own it. It's special for everyone. Okay. In the garden, then, this relationship is created between God, human beings, and the land. And if you wondered about, what's going on in the Old Testament, if you remember this and apply this to most of the narratives and stuff that goes on, you'll get some insight, I think, that you may not otherwise. Because right in the very beginning, the relationship between God and human beings was beautiful and unique. And the relationship between land and humans was also beautiful and good. Yeah. I'd like you now to reflect a little bit on your own life. And think about your beginnings and where you started out. And your family of origin, if you like. And what it was like. So mum and a dad, just a mum, just a dad. Was it grandma, granddad? My brother-in-law was raised by his grandparents. Was it a happy experience or not? And as you grew older, you might have begun to think about the future and plan. Like you might think, well, if you ask an 8-year-old what they're going to be when they grow up, they always talk about occupations, and it's something like, well, if it's a boy, well, these days it would be, I'll be a seamstress, and I might, do some modelling. And if it's a girl, she might say, I'll be a truck driver. I know a few ladies that have got their licenses and driving these huge mining trucks around. Back in the day when I was growing up, it would have been, I'll be a train driver if you're a boy. And if you're a girl, you'd be, I'll be a mum. And as the children grow older, their idea of what they want to be changes. And Jordan, my son, just recently did work experience at the school here, Central Coast, and he just loved it as doing teaching. So, who knows? I think that would be a good occupation for him. And so you start developing dreams and thoughts and ideas, and you might be a business kind of person. You might have a business head on your shoulders, and you might have a business idea, and you might think, I know what's going to make some money here. And God has given you that gift. Certainly didn't give me that gift. I suspect He didn't give you that gift either. So if you're thinking of that $80,000, it's not going to come from Neil. And maybe you start to develop some relationships, some meaningful relationships, and maybe with one person, that special person, and you started to dream dreams with them, and you thought of what your future might be and where you might go and how your life might be. Maybe you thought children. You know, it'd be lovely to have children. And maybe you thought, no, I don't need to have a human companion. All I need is a cat. A cat will do me just fine, thanks.
I just call him that.
Hang on. Well, I'll just leave the volume up all the way because I've got a few clips to go through, just so, yep, cheers.
You named him?
I didn't name him. I just call him that.
So, how long have you had your pet cat, Limestone?
It's not my cat. I don't know, 7 years?
Are you serious? How come I'm just hearing about this?
'Cause there's nothing to hear. It's boring.
Look, I just think it's kind of odd that this never came up. If I had a cat at work, I would be telling you all kinds of stories about him.
And that would be boring. What?
It's nice. It's cute thinking about you taking care of a cat. It humanizes you.
I need to be humanized?
A little bit. Were you gonna say goodnight, Mike?
I said goodnight to him at the quarry.
I meant to me.
Right, so maybe you got married and got a cat. It didn't seem too long for Adam and Eve when things changed. And ultimately in chapter 6, you know, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've got this situation where the world is not good. And all that, you know, that pregnant of, you know, God's Spirit hovering over the waters and all that goodness that was going to come. And, well, it's all changed. And we read it here where it says, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. And so the Lord was so sorry he had ever made them, and he put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. I will destroy every living thing, all the people, large animals, small animals that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them. But now I've found favour with the Lord. And we know that Noah didn't find favour with the Lord because he was anything special. Because the author of Hebrews tells us why he found favour with the Lord. Because his name is in the faith chapter. Because of his faith in God. And we know that he was human. And we know that he failed as we do. Because we know what happened when he got out of the ark. So this beautiful harmonious relationship between God and humans was broken, and interestingly, between humans and the land. Such that, when you go back to the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, with God, with the entrance of sin and the broken relationship, what happened? God sent them out of the land. Out of the land. Put an angel there, they couldn't come back. Broken. And that theme runs right through the Old Testament and climaxes in Revelation, if you like. Where God says to Abraham, I have a land that I will show you. And he restores a relationship with Abraham, and in so doing, he leads him to the land. Of course, Abraham seems to not quite get it, because he kind of wanders past the land and into trouble. That's why I kind of like Abraham. He's got good intentions. Moses, the people, no land, no God. And Moses is called by God, and he brings them into a relationship with God, who then says, I will take you to a land. In fact, you can kind of tell what the relationship between the humans and God is in the Old Testament based upon what the relationship with the land is like. How was it for you? You don't seem to have to live very long in this life when stuff happens. And it may be as a child. You know, we're reading or listening to some of that stuff with what's happening with Rolf Harris. It might be as you get older and you leave school. Maybe that business idea went really, really well. And then the GFC came and all of a sudden, boom, wiped you out. That would be very scary, I think. Or that person that you chose and they chose you and you decided that you would be together forever. All of a sudden, whatever reason, that person is no longer there. And it feels like that solid ground that you thought was solid turns into water and you're sinking fast. Maybe you couldn't have kids. Maybe that dream of being a mother or a father couldn't be, for whatever reason. Whatever it was. And if you haven't hit that wall, so to speak, yet, then don't think that this sermon isn't for you. Because if you ain't got there yet, I can guarantee one thing in this life, you're going to get there at least once. At least once. Maybe your cat died.
What's wrong?
My barber is moving to a damn salon.
Okay, so follow him to another salon.
I'm not gonna do that, Frankie. I'm not gonna get my hair cut at a place called The Gossip. Just the cat, my barber, everything I care about, gone.
Your cat and your barber are everything you care about?
And the Colts. That's it. I'm done loving things.
I remember in North Queensland, my parents brought a cat over from New Zealand called Puff. It's a Persian, beautiful cat. Lovely animal. And for those of you who aren't animal lovers, well, this probably isn't for you, but for those who are, you know, they become part of your family. And you know, you somehow understand cat language and dog language or bird language or whatever it is, and you can communicate in ways that are just surreal. And it was just a beautiful animal. And one day we were told it had cancer and that the best thing to do would be to put the cat down. And Dad, in his wisdom, chose to take the tablets from the vet and bring them home and do it himself. I don't think that's a very good idea, and don't do it. So eventually, Puff went to sleep and never woke up. And I remember to this day my mum having made a lovely meal, as she does, still does, and not one of us could eat that night. We sat at the table and we were just tears and crying, and we could not eat. Our stomach was churning. And Dad said, I remember this, Dad said, we will never, ever have another animal. Have you ever done that when something really has happened and it's hurt so much? And you make these big statements. That relationship ended and you say, I will never, ever trust someone with my heart again. I will never, ever trust someone in business again. ultimately, God came up with an idea. He's going to destroy the earth. And so there was going to be a decreation. Now, bear with me. A little bit of stuff going on here, but just bear with me. It's worth it. If you've ever heard of a chiasm before, it's like a poem type of structure, if you like, where you've got concept A, concept B, concept C, and then you've got a repetition of C1, B1, A1. And typically the climax is in the middle. So the whole idea of the story or the poem or whatever is in the middle. Well, interestingly, the story of Noah is in fact a chiasm. Book of Revelation is a chiasm, by the way. So it begins with Noah and his 3 sons. Sorry, ladies, you don't get a mention. And there's violence in God's creation. And there's a divine address resolved to destroy, which we've read. Another divine address, which is a command to enter the ark. And God sends rain, period of 7 days. Another period of 7 days where he sent the rain. It says after 7 days, the waters of the flood covered the earth. There's the beginning of the flood. And then there's the rising of the flood waters. And there's another period now of 40 days where the flood waters grew deeper and the boats lifted. Ultimately, the mountains are covered and there's flooding for 150 days. Now, is there anyone here who's been in a North Queensland thunderstorm? Yeah? I don't know what it is, but in Victoria, their thunderstorms are like a heavy mist compared to what happens up in North Queensland. You know, in North Queensland, the sky is black, and it comes over, and the raindrops are like buckets on a tin roof, for sure. Well, I want you to imagine this story again in terms of decreation. The first thing that happens here is that clouds come over, the waters come up from below, and the sun, the moon, and the stars are blocked out. And the separation of light and darkness is no more. And the waters from below come up, and the waters from above come down, and there's no longer a separation anymore. And ultimately, the separation between land and water is no more. And it's all over. And we wonder sometimes about Noah. You know, he was this man of God, da da da. I want you to imagine really what it would have been like for Noah. This didn't happen in a blink of an eye. This happened over time. Where Noah's world literally came to an end. And we've heard that, don't we, in life when stuff happens to us. We go, oh, my world has ended. Well, for Noah, it literally ended. There was no world. It was all over. And when we get hit with that brick wall, it feels very dark, feels very alone, and it's like there is no tomorrow. And all of this, gone. Do you know, there's that song, that love song, where, how's it go? Birds suddenly appear every time you are near. You know that one? Can anyone finish it? Just like me, they long to be close to you. It's funny how when you're in love, the world seems so much brighter and better, and the colours are just wonderful, and the sky is bluer, and the water never tastes so fresh. Well, imagine the opposite of that. And that's what we got here. All gone. And we're right back where we started. Genesis 1. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. I'd like to share with you a video I saw on TED. Anyone familiar with the application TED, T-E-D? Have you? If you're not, I'd encourage you to have a look at it. It's quite good. There's presentations by many different people on many varied subjects, and this particular one is by a police officer whose job was to be at one end of the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, which was, designed to be a connection between two places, and has become a place where people in darkness choose to end their life. I'd just like to share this with you.
This is Jason Garber. I met Jason on July 22nd of last year when I received a call of a possible suicidal subject sitting on the cord near mid-span. I responded, and when I arrived, I observed Jason speaking to a Golden Gate Bridge officer. Jason was just 32 years old and had flown out here from New Jersey. As a matter of fact, he had flown out here on 2 other occasions from New Jersey to attempt suicide on this bridge. After about an hour of speaking with Jason, he asked us if we knew the story of Pandora's box. Recalling your Greek mythology, Zeus created Pandora and sent her down to earth with a box and told her never, ever open that box. Well, one day, curiosity got the better of Pandora, and she did open the box. Out flew plagues, sorrows, and all sorts of evils against man. The only good thing in the box was hope. Jason then asked us, what happens when you open the box and hope isn't there? He paused a few moments, leaned to his right, and was gone. This kind, intelligent young man from New Jersey had just committed suicide. I spoke with Jason's parents that evening, and I suppose that when I was speaking with them that I didn't sound as if I was doing very well. Because that very next day, their family rabbi called to check on me. Jason's parents had asked him to do so. The collateral damage of suicide affects so many people.
People can see the world very darkly. And not everyone, when they're hit with something, a tragedy in their life, sees it the same way. For some people, an end of a business, they see as an opportunity. They're just always up. They go, oh yeah, okay, that's ended. Let's look around and see what else we can do, For other people, it's enough to break them. So we need to be sensitive, I guess, to that. And even as Christians and spiritual people, obviously he came from a Jewish family, sometimes see the world very dark as well. He talks a little bit now about how something that we might be able to do on a practical level. And I guess in a world where we have all these experts and authoritarians, and we need them, and they do lots of great work, sometimes we're quite eager to, or happy to, let others fix or
listen to understand. Don't argue, blame, or tell the person you know how they feel, because you probably don't. By just being there, you may just be the turning point that they need. If you think someone is suicidal, don't be afraid to confront them and ask the question. One way of asking them the question is like this. Others in similar circumstances have thought about ending their life. Have you had these thoughts? confronting the person head on may just save their life and be a turning point for them. Some other signs to look for: hopelessness, believing that things are terrible and never going to get better. Helplessness, believing that there is nothing that you can do about it. Recent social withdrawal, and loss of interest in life.
Something happens for Noah, and the darkness begins to lighten, and the sun begins to shine through. And the waters are now receding for 150 days. And the mountains are now uncovered, whereas before they were covered. And there's a period of 40 days. And now the waters are receding, whereas before they were rising. And now we have the drying of the earth. A period of 7 days where the dove is released. You remember? The olive leaf. Another period of 7 days where now the dove is released, but the dove doesn't come home to the boat. There's a divine address, a command to leave the ark as opposed to come into the ark. And God's resolution to preserve order. And finally, a covenant blessing and peace as opposed to violence. And that's the rainbow, isn't it? And ultimately, Noah and his 3 sons. Something happens in here that makes all the difference. And it's found in chapter 8, verse 1, which says, "But God remembered Noah." And sometimes as Christians we need reminding, I think, when we are in our dark moments, in our sadness and maybe depression, that God remembered Noah and that God remembers me. And he didn't leave Noah tossing about in the dark on the waters, but he came to his rescue. Now, that world that Noah knew before the flood, I can guarantee was a very different world after the flood. There might have been mountains before, and there might have been valley here, and some trees over here. And now the mountain's gone. Maybe the mountain's over here, and the valley's gone, or maybe it's somewhere else. Life is not the same necessarily, but it can be good. It is good. There is still enough goodness in the world that when God created and said it is good, that it is good.
Hey, looks like a tough little guy. Kind of like granite. Come here, Granite. I get it. I'm the same way. Take your time.
Turns out Mike wasn't quite done loving things after all.
I think it's no coincidence that God, through his son Jesus, used a particular metaphor when he talked about himself. I think it's a very powerful metaphor. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." I am the light of the world. And you know, the tiniest little bit of light can be seen a long, long way in a lot of darkness. And we have that hope as Christians, as believers in Jesus. That no matter what comes and what wall hits us and how our lives are changed, that there is hope in Jesus Christ. Sometimes it feels like we can't keep our head above water. Remember Peter when he stepped out and began to sink? And when he cried out, Jesus immediately reached down and lifted him up. Now that miracle may not be a thunderclap or some kind of divine. It could simply be a phone call, an invitation to lunch, an invitation for a cuppa. That someone noticed that you weren't doing so well and made contact and listened to your story, understanding you and giving you the light of Jesus in your heart. He will bring meaning to your life when all meaning is lost. What made the difference for Noah is the same that makes the difference for us today. God remembers me, you. I've put a little video clip together. I'd just like to show that in closing and then close with prayer. And as you listen and watch that, I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to challenge you today to think of at least one person, maybe three, one person who you've been meaning to call, who you've noticed hasn't been doing so well, or you haven't seen for a few weeks, or you've been meaning to catch up for a cuppa or for lunch and just time. I'd like you to think of that 1, 2, 3 people and make a conscious decision today to follow through and make a difference.
Falling on my
we left Atherton and went, got a call to Mount Isa, my parents did. And within 6 months, a Seal Point Siamese cat decided to visit our home. And Dad ended up calling him Nibs. And they've had cats ever since. Just like you pray with me. Our loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for the stories that we read in the Old Testament of real people facing real problems, not so dissimilar to our own. Where it seems there's opportunities to lose faith or gain faith, to do ill or to do good. And through those stories we see your grace and love shining. And Lord, that places a real essence of hope in our heart. That just as you loved others, so too you can love me, us. And just as you forgave others, so too you can forgive me and us. And just as you died on the cross, you died for all. And you rose for all. And I pray that in our dark times we will remember the story of Noah, and we will remember Jesus, the light of the world. And in our good times we can look outside of ourselves for the needs of others who may not have heard of that hope. And we can be agents of that hope and place that hope in their heart, that it may grow into a fireball of faith. Lord, I pray that as we leave this place this morning, that we will be encouraged, we'll be affirmed, we will know of your glory and your love, and that we feel as one family. In your loving name, amen.